Hello and welcome. I am Muhammad Kantawi. I am a university teacher, and this is my first episode about the title of my series, To the Edge of the Nous. And in this first episode, as I told you, it's going to be about Allah, God, Jehovah, Yahweh. But I'm not going to be speaking about God in all religions. I'm going to be speaking about God in Judaism. So the title of this episode is going to be Allah in Judaism. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about 5 points. And each point is going to be expounded deeply. The first point that I'm going to be talking about is the 7 holy names of God. Now, the 7 holy names of God in Judaism are El, Eloah, Elohim, El Shaddai, Ehya, and Zevut, and Yahweh. These are all the names, the 7 holy names in Judaism. And they are very holy because the Jews believe that if you write them on paper, they are not erasable. They can't be erased. And they are deeply, deeply revered and respected. And maybe two of them, like Elohim and Yahweh, are not even pronounced. They are not said only by the chief rabbi on the Holy of Holies, in the Holy of Holies in Jerusalem. That means the common people cannot pronounce Yahweh and Elohim. And I'd like to stress the point that Jehovah, that in English, that's Yahweh when it is anglicized. Yahweh, in English we say Jehovah. This name Yahweh is known as the Tetragrammaton. And as you can notice, the word Tetragrammaton is from tetra and grammaton. Tetra, it means 4. Grammaton, it means letters. Because the word Yahweh is composed of 4 letters. And these letters are Y, H, W, H, Yahweh. And this name is the holiest name of God. And the Jews believe that this is the name that God gave Moses on Mount Sinai. When Moses came to God and asked him about his name, he said, "What's your name?" And that was a question by the Jews to Moses before. So when Moses went to the covenant of God, to make a covenant with God on Mount Sinai in Egypt, he directly asked God, "What's your name?" And God said in Hebrew, this is according to the Hebrew creed or faith, he said to him, "Ehe asher ehe, I am who I am, or I am that I am." And I'll be speaking about that later when we come to the point of the code of Moses. The code of Moses and the covenant of Moses. Now, the second name that I'm going to be speaking about is Elohim. Elohim is believed to be a name of plurality because in Hebrew, the im by the end is the indicator of the plural. But certainly this plural, we call it of majesty. It's the plural of the excellentiae or majestatikos. So it's not a plural in names. It's not a plural in persons, but it's a plural of majesty only, because God in Jews is one. They believe in the oneness of God. And that's the second point I'd like to speak about, the attributes of God. I'm going to be speaking about different attributes, not all of them, certainly, but the most important ones, the most important ones among them in the Jewish creed. And that is the oneness of God, the individuality of God, the transcendence of God, the personhood of God and the selfhood of God and the might of God, and also the eternity of God and also the speech of God. And all of them are applicable to God, even in Islam, not only in Judaism. So the Jews truly believe that God is one. And when we say God is one, both in Judaism and Islam, it means he is one in relation to his creation, in relation to us. He's only one. There is no one with God in his divinity and his lordship. No one. Certainly no one. And the word, the oneness of God, enotita in Greek, the oneness of God, is believed throughout the Abrahamic religions. The three Abrahamic religions, this is what they claim, certainly. I'm not going to be criticizing them for that, but certainly this is what they claim. What's their claim? Jews and Christians and certainly Muslims. Now, what you would like to ask me, what is the difference between the oneness of God and the individuality of God? Now, the individuality of God is God proper. It means God is one in himself, not in relation to other people. That's the oneness of God. But individuality, or I'd like to call it individuatedness of God, it means God is one in himself. We can't conceptualize about God as parts, and we believe that there are some parts of God that are human, and there are some parts of God that are divine. No. Certainly God is one in himself, and he is one in relation to his creation, no doubt. The third attribute is the transcendence of God. The transcendence of God, we say it in Greek, ep01 of God. This transcendence of God is believed also in Judaism. The Jews believe that God is beyond matter, beyond energy, beyond time, and beyond space. And he is a transcendent being. And I'd like to explain this point thoroughly. Now, we cannot think of God's transcendence in terms of going beyond. That's human. We go beyond. But of God we say he is beyond. And you can see the difference between go or going and being. Being doesn't include change, while going includes change. We change. God doesn't change. So when we think about the contingent transcendence of human beings, we think about it only in terms of going and becoming and running to become, to turn into something. But God, no. When we speak about his transcendence is included in his being, only being, not going, not becoming, because God doesn't become, God doesn't go. And go here, it's, the verb that relates to verb to be. That's the transcendence of God. Now, the fourth point or attribute of God is the personhood. Now, do the Jews believe that God is a person? Yes, they do. For them, God is a person like us. I mean, we believe that God is a person, not a person like us. Even Muslims believe that God is a person. But the personhood of God, and we call it in Greek prosopikotita, the prosopikotita of to theo of God is different to our personhood, no doubt. So we can speak of God as a person, no problem. And the fifth attribute of God is selfhood. Now, do the Jews believe that God has a self? Yes, they do, like us. We all believe that God has a self, and it's mentioned in the Holy Quran when God addresses the prophet Jesus on the day of judgment. He would speak about himself. The eternity of God, this is another attribute which is very important in the Jewish creed or faith. Eternity. Aioniotita. In Greek we call it aioniotita, to theo, eternity of God. Now I'd like to stir this point because the eternity of God in English is thought of both the sempiternity, which is before anything was created, and the eternity, which is after everything dies, and God is eternal. God doesn't die. So God is before time, before energy, before matter, before space, and he lasts forever, not like us. Now, the might of God is believed in all the three Abrahamic religions. Might, the ability of God. And we call it in Greek, kratiotita. God is able to do whatever he wills, whatever he wants. And I have to stress the point within kratiotita, which is the might of God, or the ability of God, to say that there are things that are believed in theology, in Judaism and in Islam. There are things that we can't say God is unable to do them, but we say God mustn't do them. It is said by the Prophet Muhammad when he said, لا ينبغي إن الله لا ينام ولا ينبغي له أن ينام. This لا ينبغي is not the sense of the Mu'tazilite meaning, معنى المعتزلة. No, it's the meaning of the Prophet Muhammad. It's not as if we oblige God not to do something. No, it's only our belief that God mustn't do this. For example, God, we say can't. God can't create someone like him. God can't be unjust to people. This attribute is very important. And the last point of attributes is his speech. And we call this point homilia, the homilia to Theo, the speech of God. And like Islam, Jews believe that God has two kinds of speech of creation, the speech with which God creates things, and the speech in the Holy Scriptures, like the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran, and the Psalms. But with regard to Jews, and with regard to us, there's a difference in the first type of speech. The Jews believe that everything that happens in the universe, everything that happens in the universe is through the speech of God. I mean, everything that happens, even the granule that comes from the mountain or from sand, the granule of sand is not going to drop from high above to down without without a word of God. So everything that's happening simultaneously, okay, is through God's speech. And that means in the Jewish creed that God didn't stop speaking from sempiternity, from the beginning, from the non-beginning of God. God didn't stop speaking, because for the Jews, if God stopped speaking, the universe is going to collapse. At this point, we are different to them in this point, because Muslims do not believe this. I'm going to be speaking about that later in the episode about Allah in Islam. So these are the attributes of God within Judaism. The third point that I'm going to speak about is the one about Moses' covenant and Moses' code. What is the covenant of Moses and what is the code of Moses? So we know that the Jews they were enslaved in Egypt, and Moses was their savior under the permission of God. And so Moses took the Jews out of Egypt. And then in the burning bush by Mount Sinai, Tor Sinai, that we have it in Arabic, God spoke to Moses and he gave him the covenant. The covenant would be that those people who are with Moses are believers. And God chose them to be believers. And he gave them the Torah. The Torah is given to Moses, their prophet. Now, the code of Moses, and that's in the Kabbalah, people of mysticism believe so. We don't know whether it is true or untrue, but they do believe this. They believe that the code of Moses is the comma in that formula that God said to him when he asked him about his name. When Moses said to God, "What's your name?" he said, "Ehya Ashir Ehya." And in English, we say, "I am who I am," or "I am that I am," or "I am which I am," because the word Ashir, in Hebrew, it can be who, it can be that, it can be which. But when I speak about God, certainly we're going to use that or who. When we use who in English, there would be no problem in the code. But when we use that, there could be a confusion in the code, because we're going to put the comma either before that I am, that I am, or we're going to put the comma after that. We'll say, I am that. I am. And there would be a problem in the meaning, in the interpretation of the meaning there. But for the Jews, particularly the Kabbalists and the Chassidists, Hasidism, it's a mystical movement within Judaism. They believe that the meaning of this Ehya Ashir Ehya, it means I am the one who truly exists. I am the one who has the true being. That's the meaning of the Code of Moses. It's a very strong code in Judaism. The fourth point within this episode is about Allah and the Kabbalah. Now, people who believe in the Kabbalah, which is the mysticism within Judaism, it's like Sufism in Islam. They believe that we're not supposed only to practice the laws of the Torah, the nomos of the Torah, so as to please God. We have to go beyond this. We have to have both orthodoxy and orthopraxy. Orthodoxy is about belief. Belief and orthopraxy is about practice. Now, orthodoxy is what you conceptualize about God in your heart. Orthopraxy is what you practice outside. Praying, paying zakah, blah, blah, blah. Fasting. Now, certainly within the Kabbalists, they would directly relate things about God to what they feel inside their souls. What their souls tell them about God, they directly believe it, even if it's not mentioned in the Torah. And here, I'd like to stress 2 points. Within the Kabbalists movement, they believe in both the transcendence of God and the eminence of God. The transcendence and the eminence of God. And there's a difference between that. They believe that God is high, is beyond everything, and he is eminent, he is close to us. We're not supposed to take within Judaism the meaning of eminence as being through the universe or within the universe. No. In Judaism, when we say the eminence of God, it means God is close to us. He can hear us. He can see us. He can affect us. He can intervene to do things to us through the faith. And this is the Kabbalist movement, or the Kabbalistic belief in the transcendence and the eminence of God. Now, the last point that I'm going to be speaking about within this episode is the Jewish concept of chosenness and concept of peoplehood, and also the concept of anthropocentrism. Now, the Jews, throughout history, they had this problem of identity, peoplehood. It means how they can build a nation to be one. We all know that the Jews through history, they lived in a diaspora. They lived in a dispersed way in different places. They didn't have a geographical nation that contained them, and so they only had that hope in God, which they take into account to be chosen people, the chosen people, Sha'bullah Mukhtar. And they take it as such, they believe in it. But within the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century, there appeared some people who would say that this concept of chosenness is of no use to the Jews. The Jews have to be pragmatic. They have to go beyond this concept of chosenness and anthropocentrism, as if they are the center of nations. And they have to work hard to realize the stuff in them, to realize their dreams, their ambitions in life. And no doubt, I mean, the orthodoxy, the people of orthodoxy within Judaism, they truly believe that God has chosen them. No doubt, they truly believe that. And it's deep even now in their consciousness. that they are the chosen people of God, not the Muslims or the Christians. They are the chosen people of God. They truly believe it. And they believe that they are anthropocentric to the universe or to the nations in the world. So these are the 5 points that I spoke about in this episode. I hope you could understand some stuff about them. Thank you very much. I hope to see you in my next episode.